participate, and a facilitator also knows how to sort the ideas of the participants and somehow make sense of their ideas, no matter perhaps how difficult it is to connect with the topic.
I like what I'm hearing. These are all very interesting definitions of what facilitating is. And it speaks about the experiences that you have about facilitating. And they're all correct. But there are so many definitions that are available out there. In fact, your own experiences define it for you. But there's this one definition that I highly resonate with. When I say resonate, this is how I feel about facilitating. This is how my own experience tells me how a facilitator should run. Go back 2 slides. To facilitate is to make easy. To facilitate is to ease a process. There are 3 elements that I'd like to highlight in this definition of what facilitating is. The first is what it is about. To facilitate is to make easy. If the bottom line, if the objective of the group is to arrive at a desired outcome, for example, in the activity, to resolve whether or not you will agree on a decision to allow ANSA staff to take in external engagements. So the role of the facilitator is to allow the group to reach that destination. Make it easy for the group to arrive at a decision on whether or not that should be allowed. Make it easy. Make it seamless. Make it like it's the most natural thing for the participants to do. If you are facilitating a meeting, for example, with community members, even if they'd rather be at home preparing lunch, they'd rather be at home doing the laundry, make it easy for them to accept the fact that they're actually there and they should be talking about community problems. The role of the facilitator in a meeting with the business group is to make it easy and natural for them to think that the business sector should be concerned about education, should be concerned about textbooks, should be concerned about teachers and facilities. The second element that we should be conscious about in the definition of facilitating is there's an objective. We don't do that exercise just for the heck of it. We don't make it easy or ease the process or institute a group process just because we want to. There's an objective. So even if there are two elements to this. There's the end, there's the means. Even if the means was easy, even if the means was accepted by everybody, but if the end was not achieved, it does not amount to anything. So even if, for example, in the exercise earlier, Giselle, the facilitator, was able to lay down the premises, define productivity. That's a good output in itself, di ba? Isn't it a good output in itself? You were able to define what productivity means and what are the indicators for productivity. But if at the end of the day you walk away from the meeting without achieving the objective and the purpose of the meeting, it does not amount to anything. It's like an exam in school where you aced, you scored perfect in all your daily quizzes, and you failed your final exam, but your daily quizzes account for 90% of your total grade. So, at the end of the day, you still walk home, you walk away with a failing grade. So that's the second element of facilitating that I'd like us to be conscious about. That there's an objective, there's an outcome desired. And then the process, there are also elements to the process. The process should be effective with people walking away from the process thinking clearly. There's good participation from everybody, and then at the end of the day, there's buy-in. They commit to the decisions or the resolution that the group has arrived at. So if there's one or two that is dissenting, if there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people that's not quite happy with the resolution that you arrived at, it still does not amount to the success of the facilitator. Part siya. It's a part of the reckoning. It's a way to check whether or not the role of the facilitator amounted to what it was instituted for. If there is no buy-in from everyone involved. As much as possible. And it can be. Next, you ask the question, how? Because that's the more difficult task. Ayaw niya. But how? It's important that as facilitator, you remain objective and focused on the group process. What's a group process? It's basically the manner or the approach to managing the discussion. It's about getting the best from everyone and bringing the event or the discussion to a successful conclusion. The group process that you institute, the group process that you manage and make everyone agree to allows the discussion to flow freely, meet the objectives for what it was organized for, and getting the best from everyone. Kasi everyone in the group, everyone in the team, everyone that's present in the meeting has something to contribute. And that should be accounted for and acknowledged and form part of the larger consensus. We'll skip 2 meetings, 2 slides, we'll go to the perhaps last slide. There are several tools actually, there are several techniques in how we can do this. But I will say, I will categorize, ayaw niya. Go to slide 10, yes. Okay? It's important that when we facilitate, you are conscious of 2 things. Prior to actually facilitating the white text, no? Understand the desired outcome. Because it will keep you focused. It will keep you on track on what the meeting is about, on what the discussion is about. What's the kind of outcome do you want to get out of it? So that's content. Second is content. Who are your participants? How much time do you have? What are the resources available to you? What are the technologies that people are comfortable with? Like in the demonstration earlier, there's only 5 participants. Meta cards might not be totally useful. But meta cards can also be totally useful where you have 50 participants. If you have 50 participants or more, it might be useful to break them up into smaller groups. That way everyone can make their contribution heard. Everyone can be able to share their ideas, but in a smaller group because there's only 5 or 6 people in the group. If you had 100 participants, that's part of your content. That's part of your background. And then, combining both the end in mind and the context within which you're going to achieve the objective, we do 3 steps. First is the plan and design. What room do I need if there's only 5 people? What room do I need if there's 10 people? What table arrangement will I require if there's 20 people in the room? How much time is available? Plan for it. And then, design the group process. There are several. ANSA, for example, is very comfortable with doing open space technology. But there are a lot of other group processes that can be used. There's brainstorming, there's consensus building. There are a lot of other group processes depending on the two major factors. Your desired outcome and the context within which the outcome should be achieved. Second, guide and control. Keep the group together. Keep the group in tow. Guide them. It's like your end or your objective is your North Star. You make sure everybody is still directed toward that North Star. You don't allow people to stray away from it. And then own up to the decisions that the group is able to arrive at. Record and more last. Record and take action on agreements. Because no matter how good you're able to guide and control and direct the discussion, if there's no actual action arising from it, it does not amount to anything. Conscious of 4 principles. These are the steps. These are your considerations. These are principles. 1, effective participation of all. Number 2, mutual understanding. Not losing sight, not losing respect for each other. That at the end of the day, you are teammates. You are partners. Whether it's business, whether it's government, or the community members. You don't want to walk away from the process enemies. So the group process that you will agree with, the meeting that you are conducting should allow for mutual understanding. And then, the input that you made earlier, the very nice insight that you gave about making everyone's contribution feeling affirmed. Accounting all of the participants' contribution to the process. That whatever decision that you arrive at, everyone will walk away and say, I'm part of it. That decision is not the directors alone, that decision is not the decision of the team leader alone, but I'm part of that decision because I was contradictory. There was attribution. I was included in the ideas, solutions, and decisions. And then, of course, everyone should walk away feeling shared responsibility for the outcome that you have. Others, actually, as you learn and mature in the process of facilitating, you will need more techniques and tools for guiding and controlling and in designing the group process, whether that's open space, whether that's consensus building. They are already tools and processes and methods that you can learn along the way. But what's important for now are the basics. You will, in designing, for example, you will be conscious about the number of participants. How many males? How many females? Why? Does it matter? Does it matter? If there are more males, for example, or more females, should you be conscious of that? You should, right? Because
Some topics are gender sensitive.
some topics, I will not attribute it to topics. Simple. Men have shorter attention spans. Women would like to talk about details. That's a basic thing. That's a basic gender difference. So if you have that kind of mix in a group, maybe no consciousness. Not all men can be emancipated. Right? Some men may want to talk about details. Some men may have longer attention span than others. Or some women might not want to talk about details so much, but will get to the bottom line immediately. But sometimes they are outliers. They are the ones that are emancipated. They're conscious of their gender roles and want to emancipate from out of it. But in a general setting, these factors can come into play. Another, the nature of topic, like you said. If it's social accountability, something that mothers, lonely women are naturally concerned to talk about. Or the youth, for example. You're talking about social accountability. Or they'd be more interested to talk about textbooks or the lack of it. It's packaging this. Another factor you will want to consider, the background and positions of the participants. In Indonesia, our partners in Indonesia, if you're younger, if you're a woman, can you be the presider? No. Right? I mean, these factors come into play as a matter of cultural background. You cannot just march into a room, even if you're the designated facilitator, and you suddenly realize all participants are men and all of them are older than me. If you can do that. And then, of course, the familiarity with the subject matter. You can just march in the room, run a meeting on social accountability, and they don't have any working knowledge about it. You can talk about tools, you cannot talk about processes, you cannot talk about policies unless you cover the basics of social accountability. And this will factor into your planning and your designing. Another, the time. How much time is given to you to discuss the topic at hand? You can go on forever if you had the luxury of time. But if you cannot, like what Giselle did earlier, if you have the luxury of time, you can set your premises clearly. Define productivity, what are the indicators of productivity, what are the observations about productivity, if you have the luxury of time. But if you don't, you immediately resolve the issue at hand. Guide and control the discussion towards that end. And you cannot do open space technology if you have limited time. You can only do open space if there's enough time for it. So time is a factor when you design, guide, and control the discussion. And in guiding and controlling, for example, there are several skills required from out of the facilitator. How do you set the ground rules? How do you limit participants that have a tendency for grandstanding? Right? So there's that. In some meetings, for example, there's the one mic rule or one mouth rule. Right? Whoever has the mic is the one allowed to speak at the moment. That's one ground rule. The other ground rule is some other common ground rule is parking. Parking the issues that are getting in the way of resolving your concern as of the moment. Those are some of the ground rules. Set the scene. S-C-E-N-E. Set the scene. Table arrangement. There's a way also of managing people. The one that comes in late, assign him to do the prayer. Therefore, the person is forced to come in before the meeting starts. Assign the person to be presiding officer. Right? If the person is notorious for leaving early, keep the juicy items on the agenda at the last part. And that's how you manage this team. There's one mouth rule, one mic rule, assigning them tasks so that they're not as notorious. But at the same time, it's important for the facilitator to listen and engage the participants. In the training environment, for example, you're conscious about body energy. Are they still with you? Are they engaged in the process? If they're not, introduce the icebreaker. Break them up into smaller groups. Change the room. Go to another training venue if you have that kind of luxury. But that's part of the guiding and controlling process. And there are a lot of tricks in the trade, so to speak, that you will learn along the way as you do it. But the essential aspects, I think, of facilitating are what you need to prepare for, what you need to do when when you're there. Things that you shouldn't forget about as you do it. These are the principles. No one gets left behind. It's a shared responsibility, ensuring that everyone is part of the process. These are just techniques. These are just tools. But this will help you manage the process well. Questions? Your own insights. How then do you see yourselves applying? Or what are experiences in the past that you're now realizing, this would have been useful if I did this?
Mine's really more of establishing the focus, or like the first two guidelines here: understanding threat outcome and know the background or context. I think that's the most helpful, because sometimes, especially during meetings, sometimes there are just a lot of things that you want to discuss. That sometimes you, of course, time is compromised, and because there's a lot of things along the way after the meeting, you're left like, what did we talk about? I mean, what were the next? Actually, what are we supposed to do next? Because there's just a lot on the plate already. So maybe the point of my realization is to focus on a particular meeting or discussion. If not one, but at least just have a more concise.
And then therefore, the challenge, the technique there in planning and designing is to manage your agenda. For example, a meeting can be conducted to accommodate, a 2-hour meeting can actually be used to discuss just one item in the agenda if it's controversial. But the same amount of time can actually be used to discuss several items, 5, 6 items in an agenda, where it's just planning for your outing, deciding where the Christmas party will be, how much bonuses to give to people. See, it's about what can be packed into your agenda given the amount of time that you have. But if you know if you know the topic is controversial, it will get people excited, it will get people agitated, and then therefore, that's the only thing you talk about in a 2-hour meeting.
So it's more actually, same with just as maybe understanding the desired outcome and the background or the context, because it's also important to factor in also what do we want to achieve after the introduction or the meeting, and from there, once it's clear, then everything else will follow.
Because we can get swayed by your participants, especially if you have know-it-alls. Especially if you have senior people in your meeting, right? They can sway the direction of the discussion whichever way they want. They can sway you to talk about an old memorandum circular issued by secretaries from 5 terms ago. Right? And if you don't know any better, you can actually be swayed to indulge in a discussion that you have that you know nothing about.
How do you usually manage that? Whenever you have, because of course, some point you have this Asian culture thing, we respect older people. How do you normally deal with that? You have, say, ASEC someone, then you know that he's not agreeing to your, I mean, you're not going to say your discussion is towards, say, passing this memorandum to institutionalize your project, for example. So
That's a strategy. But you don't play, what do you call this? You don't play hard line. If I were in the position, for example, I will recognize the assistant secretary, but that's a very good, institutional asset. That's a institutional mechanism. We can go back to that MC and so on and so forth. But that MC is buried in the archives. I think the question is, what did that MC amount to, and what will be helpful at this time? It's a challenge siya. Siya patuloy sorry. You will now be the one put in the defensive and say and illustrate how that old MC in the past has been effective. And then he'll be forced to record and admit to himself, oh yeah, it wasn't effective, and therefore we need to think about new ways of institutionalizing something. And perhaps the suggestion can already come from him on how it's going to institutionalize this thing. What are other forms of institutionalization that the group can jointly explore? What was the bottom line? What was the outcome expected of the meeting? To resolve the outcome desired of the meeting was to resolve on a measure or a mechanism to institutionalize something. That's the outcome. But the senior official keeps harping back to issuances in the past. Okay? That's your dilemma. But it's a know-it-all. It's something that is always referring to institutional memory. Hardline position by your participant. So you put him in the defensive position you put him in a position where he is supposed to defend the idea by asking him for proof of evidence. But that's a very good affirm. That's a very good suggestion. I think the memorandum circular from 1993 might have been a very good policy. But can you remind us, Ase? Can you remind us what are its demonstrated successes? It will be hard to give anything and realize, we might need to explore a new policy. We might need to explore a new mechanism of institutionalizing this, because the one that's in place has not been effective. What are your ahas?
For me, I think what I learned at that first day is more on, I think all of the learnings is more on the plan and design part, because it's crucial step for every
You don't march into a meeting and say, okay, I'll facilitate this.
So you should
So
have
if-
a background. So have an effective and efficient planning and designing. The activity or just even it's just a simple meeting, you should know what first the objective of your meeting and your outcome then.
When Giselle, for example, first approached me for this, I had a lot of questions. You don't just say yes to something and okay, we'll do it. But no, if you want to be effective about the outcome that you want to achieve from out of an exercise, a meeting, a process, you ask a lot of questions. That's part of knowing the background and the context. Because if you don't have a clear understanding, you will not be able to plan and design. You cannot just barge into a process and say, okay, I'm the designated facilitator today, let's do this. Anybody, Randy, Adele, Yusek Angge, when you ask them to do something, instead of you getting the answers that you want, you will be barraged with a lot of questions. They will not provide you with answers. In fact, they'll ask you questions precisely to set the two things. What is it that you want to get out of it? And where are the beginnings? Saan bang nanggagaling yung mga tao? And facilitating is making it easy for them to reach from here to here. And setting the parameters. This is your end, this is their beginning. As your role as facilitator is to bring them from here to here without them knowing that they're on their way, that they are together. It will just hit them. Nangyari. And they'll come out happy of where they are at the end. Without them realizing that despite the difficulty in the process, despite some difficulties in personalities, despite some irritations in terms of the process and of behavior, they got to the end that the group wanted to reach.
From here, we appreciate what happened here because it made me refresh all the things that I've learned and the experiences that I've had before. And then I would like to emphasize on the plan and design because aside from doing a really good plan and designing for how you will facilitate for a meeting, it is also important that well, for me, it's also important that we should coordinate with those who are doing or with the organizers of the meeting because there are times when your plan and your design is really good. However, some of the things when you go inside the meeting are not prepared yet. And so your plan and design will not work properly because of that. That's why we really should ensure that the organizers will also know your plan and design so that they can provide for your needs.
Example in knowing the background or context, you ask about who will be there in the meeting because it's important where to get them seated. You don't sit together two notorious people, two people who are traditionally and known to be negative. The opposition, people who always take the negative position, you will not sit them together. It will only fire them up and they will influence the people around them. Right? So it's important, like in a meeting, you always ask who will be there. Because you will sit them where they cannot influence other people or where their negative influence can be mitigated. Don't make two negative people sit together. They will only influence the outcome of the meeting and they will influence the other participants of the meeting.
For me, the one I most appreciated, of course, to know the background of the context. I think it's really important. Also, for the last part, these are the core principles that taking shared responsibility for the outcome. I think so that the participants they feel like the idea or the outcome of that meeting is like really they're part of what they could understand the outcome and then they could see themselves after the meeting. I could do probably this to help out with the action step that they need to accomplish for the next meeting or something like that. So they already have an action step in mind and what they will do, not as a group or as a person, as an individual after they step out of the meeting. So I think that's the most helpful for me. That's aspect.
What resources do you usually use to know more about the guy in the control? Because I'm more particularly interested in what you were saying about brainstorming, because normally we were exposed at least for ANSA use
Group processes.
the group process.
Managing group processes. Sige. That's it for now. Let's plan out paano to sa